Early in the morning, early in the morning, in the morning.
What's going on, people? It's your boy Cam, Topical Juice, and I'm back with my second video. My new friend, fellow YouTuber, a psych for sore minds, man. Introduce yourself for the people then for me, please, my brother.
It's always a pleasure, Cameron. It's great to be collaborating with you. So my name is Dr Sohom AKA. I'm a consultant forensic psychiatrist. So I assess mentally disordered offenders for a living. And I've got a YouTube channel, A Psych for Sore Minds. Fledgling, but steadily growing.
Ah, it's pending. Dr. Sohom, amazing. I had doctor on my channel. That's how you know we're leveling up for real. So guys, we actually recorded our first ever video about 5-10 minutes ago, talking about the Tim Westwood situation and addressing other things as well. Victims of sexual abuse and along other things. We're recording our second video now, and this one's going to be on my channel. So obviously make sure you head over to Dr. Sohom's channel, please. Everything's going to be in the description below. Everything on there, all the content is similar to mine anyway. So of course, it's amazing. So let's get into this video, man. In this video, we're going to be, well, pretty much going to be talking about just again a bit more about you, to be honest, a bit more about your story, about some of the stories that you've seen, some of the things, some of the people you've come across. I mean, we've got a hell of a story about a man gouging his eyeballs out. So we've got a lot of things to talk about, man. We've got a lot of things to talk about. So cool.
If you don't mind, if we start, I'd like to know a bit more about you and your kind of journey, because you asked me on the last video. So I've only very recently come across your channel. So how did you start, and what inspired you to try and become a YouTuber?
Fantastic question, man. So basically, it's a bit different from your journey, actually, because in your journey, also you've seen all this fake BS out there, and you want to dispel those whatever and speak the real. So for me, I've always wanted to be creative. I've always nullified my creativity, bro. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, you know how it is growing up in this country. I never liked school, but they drill it into you that you will fail at life if you don't get your GCSEs, your degree, whatever, and work for a corporation. They prime you for working for the system. And me personally, I've always been a rebel. I've always had a problem with authority. I've always seen the flaws in the system that we live in, and this, that, and the other. And I've always just wanted to be myself unapologetically, basically. So growing up, you'll find this actually quite interesting. I've never, ever, until I was about 22 years old, spoke about my problems and my traumas and my issues. You know how men are, young men in this country, we don't talk about our issues. So I always used to listen to other people's problems. I love listening to other people's issues. People come to me because they value my perspective. And it's humbling that people come to me because they trust my opinion, whatever. So when I got older, after uni, and I finally got breaking point, I realized I don't want to do this corp shit no more. I don't want to do this working for the man no more. What can I do? How can I be my own person? I eventually thought, you know, YouTube was saturated even when I joined it, to be honest, bro. But I thought, you know what? There is only one Cam. There ain't going to be another Cam on YouTube, innit? So I might as well do it. So again, I was and ahhing, what type of content do I want to do? And it turns out that I thought, I listen to other people. I enjoy helping other people. So I might as well give people my opinion on shit, basically. And that's kind of where it stemmed from, you know. I originally thought, could I be like an agony uncle type thing where people tell me their issues? I then I thought, nah, what I would do is I'll rather talk about the things that I find interesting. Social media, how does social media affects relationships, mental health, relationship type of stuff, or anything that I'm just interested in. And eventually that evolved into trending topics. So what's actually going on in the news, what's going on social media, what's trending and what's hot. And that's what kind of helped develop my channel faster. So for example, when Dr. Velli got allegedly exposed for texting underage girls and this, that, and the other, that was the first kind of topic that blew my channel up. You know, I was getting like thousands of subscribers in a few days. I haven't had a video like that for a while, where it's just kind of gone blown up and, you know, exposed me to a wider audience. But that was kind of that's been the linear kind of process, really. I enjoy the sound of my own voice. I enjoy helping people. I enjoy giving perspectives to people. So and here we are, man. You know, I think it's crazy how, I mean, I'm sure you can empathize with it so much. Like the first 1,000 subscribers, I don't know how long it took you, but it took me forever. Absolutely.
And I have to ask, did you have like doubts? Did you have days where you just thought, why am I doing this? Is it worth the effort? Do you still feel like that?
Great question. Not once. Really? And the reason why I never had any doubts is because I knew I didn't want to do anything else. I need this. I'm fully at my, what's that saying? I'm at my wit's end or whatever. I'm no longer, I can't do the corporation stuff no more. I can't be talked to anyhow by some guy that ain't been through half the stuff I've been through in life and blah, 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 but you're talking to me anyhow within these four walls. I literally just thought the YouTube channel is the way. I thought I have to make it, or there is no other way. I have to make it type of thing. So I've always had the motivation to continue. And now, you know, the universe is giving me signs, showing me signs that it's actually we're on the right direction. You know, we're on the right path. Like yourself, for example, when I saw that you did like a 15,000 subscriber video, and I looked at your subscribers now, 20,000. That video was only 4 weeks ago. You know what I'm saying? That's a lot of growth in a matter of in a space of a month. So if you've ever had any doubts, please get rid of those doubts, because clearly you're on the right, you know, you're on the right pathway as well. So what about you though? You ever had any doubts about continuing this, or are you now realizing what it is?
I think, as you say, I've had a bit of a growth spurt, for want of a better word, within the last month. And before then, I was going on for about 18 months. And yeah, very regularly, almost every week, I would think to myself, this is just not worth it. I think the difference between mine and your situation, I'm kind of in the opposite situation, that I've got loads of other things going on in my life. I've got a profession. I earn way more in my, you know, actual professional work than I do for YouTube. In fact, I'm losing money on YouTube. Not that it's about the money, but I guess my point is so many times where I've come back from a hard day's work. You know, I've got a wife and kids, obviously I need to give them some time and attention. And then I'm trying to do this YouTube thing on the side. And I'm just like, why am I doing this? Like, what is the point? You know, why am I spending hours researching a video, writing it, and then I only get, you know, like a couple of hundred views? What is this worth my effort? And so I've had that internal conversation over and over again. I've been close to quitting so many times. And I still, if I'm being perfectly honest, don't feel like it's worth my effort yet. But I do think it's starting to get to a point. If it keeps going at this kind of trajectory, then maybe in a few months I'll finally think this is worth it. I don't think that yet. But also, like, I think I need to have a word with myself and limit my expectations and be a bit patient. I think I'm a very impatient person, and that bleeds into all aspects of my life, including YouTube.
I think some of the things that what makes it worth it is, you know, like when you go to the gym, for example, you start working out and you start seeing progress, and that motivates you more. You've all of a sudden you've got a striation on your shoulder coming out. Your triceps are now looking a little bit, you know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like, that then motivates you to carry on. So I think with YouTube, for example, like people like yourself, you reaching out to me, for example, is another notch that I can add to the motivation ladder or whatever. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, as in, like, whether it's someone reaching out to me via email, whether it's someone, a brand wants to work with me, whatever it is, that's validation that you're on the right path. I feel like when, for example, someone reaches out to you and says, we've seen your YouTube channel, we'd love to hear your perspective on BBC News or Sky News about the mental health crisis in men of between 20 and 30 or whatever, that you're going to be like, okay, we're really getting some tangible, you know, good positive things come off the back of this YouTube thing. And you're on 20,000 subscribers, bro. So it's really going to be pending, man. Please don't give up. There's people.
Thank you. I appreciate you having the confidence in me, brother.
No, definitely. And the topics are very interesting. The topics that I personally, you know, I have an interest in. Yeah. So anyway, that literally leads me on to kind of like your background and stuff. So, like, if you don't mind retelling that story about one of the craziest stories you've ever heard, or what was it? It was a prison story, wasn't it? So what was it?
It was
the craziest prison story that you came across?
Yeah. So I think in my career, there's definitely been a few cases that have affected me or are memorable for different reasons. And this one that we were talking about before is definitely the most extreme thing that I've seen. So I saw a man who basically removed his own eyeballs. So yeah, exactly. So this was a civil case rather than a criminal case. So he's already been charged. He's already in prison. I do a lot of criminal work where I try and see if somebody's like criminally responsible for their crime, but this is different. He's already in prison, already sentenced. For a murder, I believe it was, in a gang fight, like decades. No, sorry, I'm getting my cases mixed up. Apologies. It was for arson. So he had an argument with his girlfriend. The dude's an alcoholic. He's a sort of slight man in his white man in his 50s, I believe, and so he's in prison. And I basically think the other prisoners didn't like him. They didn't take a shine to him. He wasn't built for prison. He wasn't down with any of the other prisoners. He was a bit snooty, maybe. So they started this campaign of hate, probably out of boredom more than anything else. So they started spreading these lies about him. So they started saying that he was a paedophile, which wasn't true. And they started saying that he'd actually killed his girlfriend in the fire, which also wasn't true. So because of that, he was getting bullied, he was getting targeted, he was getting called a nonce, he was getting kind of hit and beaten up. And then basically he became psychotic, which is really unusual to happen at that late stage in life. Usually when people become psychotic, like in their late teens, early 20s. And he started having these paranoid delusional beliefs. And he believed that the other prisoners wanted to eat his eyeballs. And he thought that if they did that, they would get these like superhuman powers and they would all break out of prison. So very bizarre delusional beliefs, kind of typical of what I see in my patients. So basically, he preempted it by removing his own eyeballs. He did it with the first one with a plastic spoon, but that snapped, and then just literally used his fingers to pull out the other one. So yeah, that's that's basically what went down. And the reason I was assessing him, so I assessed him, I should say, years after this happened. It's about 2 years later. So I didn't see him like straight afterwards. By this time, he was released from prison. He was in a care home because he's blind, obviously. And he had a reasonable level of function for somebody that's blind. And his psychosis had completely subsided. So he wasn't having these paranoid delusions. But he was trying to sue the prison health team, the InReach team, because in his opinion, they should have picked this up. And they should have put him to the hospital wing. They should have treated him with antipsychotics and would have prevented this. When I did my assessment, I looked through all the prison notes, all the assessments, and I have to say they were pretty shoddy. They weren't detailed assessments. Like, he was expressing some paranoid odd ideas, hearing voices, and they kind of fobbed him off a little bit for him to be seen the next week. So the assessment happened on a Friday afternoon, which I'm sure is relevant. And instead of dealing with it then, they kind of said they'd review him again on the Monday. And then later on that Friday night, he did what he did, took his eyeballs out. So my conclusion was that the assessment was poor, and it probably was a breach of duty, but there's no causation. So even if they had done a thorough assessment, there's no way they could have predicted what he was going to do, because he didn't telegraph it in any way at all. But yeah, that's definitely one of the most extreme things that I've heard happen in my career.
That's genuinely insane, and you have to be truly psychotic to have to gouge your own eyeballs out, because the pain itself, let alone just it's weird, but the pain is insane.
I think in his mind, he thought that's the only way he could live. So he thought if he took his own eyeballs out, he would not have eyeballs, but still be alive. Whereas he thought the other prisoners would kill him.
Little did he know, he could have just kept his eyeballs and his life, whatever. But it is what it is. But
yeah, I definitely not recommend it.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't recommend that. Please, if you're watching this, don't try that at home. You know what I'm saying? But you mentioned how the notes, for example, were kind of shoddy. The system almost let him down in this example. Now, I know you obviously are still working within certain circles, and I don't want you to bash any employers or whatever, but what's your opinion then on the system in general? Do you think the system is built to help rehabilitate these people, or do you find that people like him often fall through the cracks and the system just turns their back on people with mental health stuff in jails and stuff?
I think it's no secret that mental health care provision in prisons is really lax in terms of its, but I wouldn't say lax in terms of its standard. I don't think that's fair, but it is really underrepresented, underfunded. So I've worked as a psychiatrist in a mental health team in prison, just like this man. He had a mental health team that was responsible for the prison. And I have to say the waiting lists are crippling, because there's just not enough doctors and nurses that are in there. And there's so many people that are psychiatrically unwell in prison, and there's so many complications. So I'll give you a few examples. One problem is understaffing. One problem is you get a lot of prisoners who fake mental illness.
Of course.
Sometimes they do that just for medication, because if you can get antipsychotics, if you can try and get something like, sedatives, diazepam, it's going to give you a buzz. It's used as currency inside prison. So that's one problem. Another massive problem is these huge waiting lists to get people into hospitals, secure hospitals in the first place. So if somebody needs to be transferred out of prison, they, unless their crime was very, very low level, like drug dealing or something that didn't involve violence, then almost certainly they'll need to go to secure prison. So I've also worked in these secure prisons. So they're like psychiatric wards, but they're locked, and there's a high level of security, like, magnetic closing doors, big wire fences around so that people can't escape. And because they are so expensive, there are not that many hospital beds in these compared to ordinary psychiatric wards. So the waiting list is eye-watering. So I've definitely seen several times in my career people who are completely psychotic, who are like trapped in their cells or in segregation or in the healthcare unit. I've seen people who are like literally smearing shit on the walls in terms of dirty protests. That's the only time I've ever seen someone pull their eyes out, but I've seen other people self-harm severely, like cutting themselves, picking at their wounds, all because they're just so agitated and so distressed. But the problem is you can't treat them against their will in prison. So if somebody's psychotic like this man, and he doesn't want to take tablets because he believes his delusion, so he doesn't believe he's unwell, then there's nothing you can do. You literally have to wait until a hospital bed becomes available, which can take weeks, months. Whereas in these psychiatric units, you can use the Mental Health Act to enforce treatment. So if necessary, as a last resort, you can restrain somebody and inject them with antipsychotics to help treat them. You can't do that in prison.
Okay. So why are, I mean, I suppose the NHS in itself, for example, is stretched just in general, but why is that what the main reason that contributes to the understaffing in prisons, or is it just the fact that people generally don't want to work with prisoners because they might have an opinion on them or a perception of them, they might be violent criminals or whatever? Is that why are they so understaffed?
I think it's a little bit of both. So it's a well-known fact that mental health in general in the NHS is massively underfunded. If you look at the amount of budget, I can't remember the exact figures. I did know them once. I think it's something like 18%, don't quote me on that, of all funding goes towards mental health services, whereas something like 40% of healthcare burden is related to mental health. Yeah, so just off the bat, all of mental health is underfunded. And then when you look at prisons, I guess it's not politically sexy, is it, to spend money? Politicians are not trying to fund more healthcare for prisoners when the rest of society is already underfunded, because people judge prisoners and they don't care that they have the same level, the equivalent sort of level of mental health. And as you say, I think that a lot of staff are dissuaded from working in prisons because it can be quite a tense environment. You know, especially for the nurses, I think they bear the brunt of it more than we do. As doctors, you get to like swan in. We only go in for like 1 day a week, whereas the nurses are actually based there, and they have to deal with really kind of aggressive and difficult prisoners at times. And everything I was mentioning before, you know, prisoners faking mental illness. Sometimes they can intimidate staff because they want medications. So if you've got a choice between a relatively leafy job in a non-criminal psychiatric unit, and you get paid the same amount to work in prison, then unless you're really fascinated with criminality like I am, there's not much of an incentive to work in those environments.
Who was the first person that you had to assess in prison, for example? The very first prisoner that you've now been exposed to?
So I'll tell you I'll answer that slightly differently if that's all right, because I think it's an interesting story. I'll tell you about the first person I gave evidence for in a murder trial.
Okay.
So this is just to give your viewers a bit of a trigger warning. It's a really, really tragic case. So one of the first cases that I assessed as an expert witness was an 18-year-old girl. I'm not going to use her real name. I call her Yasmin in my book. I talk about her extensively in my book. And she is an 18-year-old girl who had no criminal history, no history of violence, no history of mental illness. And she became psychotic gradually over the space of a few weeks. She wasn't like clearly, she was unwell, but she wasn't telegraphing any signs of extreme violence. So she was making odd comments. She was telling her family off for watching smut on TV, even though they're just watching the normal sitcoms. Yeah. She was like listening to weird instrumental music instead of like her usual pop music, Miley Cyrus. So there was some indications that something was odd, but nothing particularly dangerous. And then this is what happened. One day she was babysitting her 2-year-old nephew, and she smothered and killed him, basically. And the reason that she did this was because she was suffering from these delusions. So she believed that there were demons inside this little boy and that she needed to remove them to save him. And she believed that she could reincarnate him. And the reason that one of the indications that this wasn't like a malicious, aggressive killing was the very fact she didn't try and cover it up in any way when her parents returned. Yeah. She kept trying to explain to them, no, I've not killed him. I'm going to reincarnate him. You just have to wait for the full moon. So obviously the police were called. She was taken to prison on remand. So I saw her in Holloway prison. And it was really hard to assess her because she was so paranoid in her psychosis that she was really evasive and really dismissive. So she wouldn't tell me anything. She was kind of denying any memory of what had happened with the little boy. She wasn't telling me about her inner thoughts, but I could tell there was something off about her. She had this there was just something really odd about her. And then I managed to convince the Ministry of Justice, this is before her trial, to transfer her over to a medium secure female unit when I was working. And she was on remand there. And then I had about 6 weeks to write a detailed court report. And I wrote a court report and I said that I suspect that she's got schizoaffective disorder. And even though it's really hard to tease out the symptoms, and I managed to get her a finding of not guilty by reason of insanity. Wow. But she's still got a hospital, so I just want to make that very clear. It's not like she's released. She had to go back to our ward for long-term rehabilitation. She was in a hospital for about 3 or 4 years. And it took a long time. It took about 18 months just to medicate her out of her delusions. So for 18 months, she still believed that what she did was right. She still didn't believe she didn't believe that her nephew was dead, basically. She thought that she'd removed the demons and he'd been reincarnated. So she literally didn't believe anybody, including her own family. And then after a long time of medication, the beliefs assuaged and reality started creeping in. So after about 18 months, she realized what she had done. So as you'd expect, this was like a huge shock to her. So then she became really clinically depressed. So we had to treat that and we had to give the therapy for that. And the reason that I bring this case up, apart from the fact that it's first time, apart from the fact that the actual incident was so shocking, was that it was the first time that I gave evidence. So it was really anxiety provoking.
Yeah.
And I learned about the tactics that barristers use. So in the cross-examination, the opposition barrister, the prosecution barrister, was trying to get her a life sentence in prison, which I think it was completely the wrong outcome for her. And if that had happened, she had no insight. She wouldn't have accepted medication. We couldn't have treated her against her will in prison. So I'm pretty sure if that happened, she'd still be psychotic to this day, and she'd probably never leave prison, to be honest with you. So just the experience of cross-examination was one thing. And the other thing is that her brother, who's the father of the child that was killed, was part of her rehabilitation. So he would come in for these weekly sessions with me and her, and we'd sit in this room. And it was just sort of agonizingly emotional to sit in a room with the two of them and to see them try and reconnect and try and sort of make sense of what happened.
That's insane. That's just the fact that, sorry, just to interrupt, that's insane that he was prepared, well, not insane in a good way, in a mixed way. Just the fact that he was prepared is good, that he's prepared to forgive in a sense and bring her back to life. What brought this on then? How did this happen?
So I don't really have an answer to that, I'm afraid. She's exceptional in that almost all of my patients, easily 95%, maybe even more of my patients have something in their background or their upbringing that explains, number one, why they turned to criminality, number two, why they developed a severe mental illness. And sometimes it's the same factors. So it's often them having neglectful parents, or being abused physically or sexually as children, or poverty, or growing up in a really tense, violent environment, either from their family or from gangs, or drug and alcohol use is a huge one. So what I'm saying is that almost everybody has some of these factors, sometimes multiple factors, that explain why they end up in prison or in my secure units. But this young girl, Yasmin, has none of those things. So nobody really knows. It's just completely random. She didn't even have a family history of mental illness, which we often see.
What the hell? That's what I'm saying, and that's why it's even more fascinating for me as her brother, for example, to somehow look past this. Like, if my sister's done this out of nowhere, I don't know if I can. I just don't know how I'd react. Yeah. I don't know how I could. Is she still in? Where is she now then?
So she was released from prison. This all happened. The incident, the killing was, I'm trying to think now, 2014. And she was released from prison, I think, about 4 years later. So she's been out in the community for quite some time. But she'll still be followed up. Oh. So we know that her mental state's much better. And we know that her offending was directly driven by this psychosis. So as long as the psychosis doesn't return, then in theory, she's not like a criminogenic person. She's not antisocial. She's not somebody who commits violence regularly. So she is safe as long as the psychosis doesn't return. So she is followed up regularly by a psychiatrist. She has to take a medication regularly as well.
So what do you think that we could do more as a society, as a system, that will help rehabilitate prisoners, for example, to come back as normal, law-abiding citizens, basically? What more do you think we can do as a country, basically, to help these people?
That's a good question, and there's not really easy answers, and everything's got to do with money, right?
Money, always funding, yeah.
Root of all evil, right? So I think the very first thing we need to do is to change the environments of prisons themselves. Okay. So as I'm sure you'll know, your viewers will know, that the very tense environments and the atmosphere has gotten so much worse in the last decade or so for a number of reasons. One big reason is because of underfunding, there's even less prison officers. So in some prisons, it's basically like the inmates rule the prisons. Yeah. So there's just not enough staff on the floor to look out for what everyone's doing. So drugs are rife. Spice, you've probably heard of. That's a relatively new phenomenon, really popular because it's hard to detect, really cheap, really easy to sneak in compared to other drugs. So that's caused a crisis in prisons of people becoming agitated and psychotic. So if you had the resources to have a decent number of prison staff, then the environment of prison wouldn't be so violent and tense, because you can't really concentrate on your rehabilitation if you're being bullied, if you're either being forced drugs, or if you make the wrong decision to take drugs because you want the time to pass faster. So that's the first thing. And then I suppose the next thing would be to increase the funding of the actual mental health teams in prison. From what I know about prison rehabilitation, a lot of it is tick boxing exercises. So a lot of people go to these classes and they just kind of say what they have to say, and they sit through without really sort of changing their perspective or their cognitive traits, because it means that if they're on parole, they get released earlier. So I think a lot more time and effort with individuals.
Okay. What does a day in the life of Dr. Sohom look like? What do you do on a daily basis? You actually mentioned to me on email that someone cancelled on you today. What was that?
So I'm quite lucky in my job because it's got a lot of variety. So 2 days a week, I work for the NHS in criminal courts. So I go to Harrow Crown Court 1 day a week, Willesden Magistrates Court 1 day a week. And the rest of the time, I get to kind of pick and choose my appointments. So I see lots of people in prisons or in other courts. And I have to say, since lockdown, my life has actually become a bit easier because a lot of the assessments are remote nowadays, which is good. If it's a relatively straightforward assessment, if they're not really unwell, then it's fine to do a remote assessment. But if they're actually psychotic, which is the minority, then you have to kind of see them in person. So I will see them and I'll say, you know, I need to come and see you, so I'll go to prison. But I get to pick and choose. So I'll put like 1 day aside just to all these prison visits. And the rest of it is not particularly that exciting or sexy. It's just writing up reports. So for every 1 hour that I spend with a prisoner, I spend probably about 7 or 8 hours writing up reports. So I go through all the case papers, all the medical notes, witness statements. So people that actually observed them while they were committing a crime, you know, assault, violence, medical notes I've already mentioned, the police interviews, transcripts to try and pick out whether they've got a mental illness or not. So it is quite, some of it is quite mundane, but the advantage of that is I can pick and choose my hours. So I'm one of these guys that gets up at like 5, half 5 in the morning. I do like a few hours work in the morning, go to the gym mid-morning, sometimes go to the cinema to watch a bit of Marvel movies with my wife because she works part-time. So I'm quite fortunate that I get to kind of build my timetable around what I want to do.
I've got a question then. Obviously you're an expert in everything psychos, basically, yeah. So what is, give me your, I suppose your top 5, not in terms of what they've achieved or whatever, but as in like who in history classifies as a psychotic, psycho, you know, who famous names like for example, I don't know, what's that famous guy who did in America who killed all them people, or
Ted Bundy?
Ted Bundy, here we got cult, all these random cult leaders and things like that. Like, do they classify it as psychotic or what?
Okay, I'm happy to answer that. Before I do, I'm going to tell you the difference between being a psychotic and a psychopath, because the two very different things.
Okay, sorry. Okay, yeah, give me a difference.
So psychosis, or being psychotic, is a mental illness, and that's when you're outside of reality. So I talked about some of these symptoms earlier on in the cases. So typically people have auditory hallucinations, which means they hear voices, or they have delusions, which are fixed, ununderstandable ideas, usually quite paranoid ideas. So the reason I say that's a phase is because they're different from their baseline. And in theory, if you give them medication, and if the medication works, and that in itself is a struggle, then those symptoms decrease and they're back to their normal selves. Whereas a psychopath is an extreme form of a personality disorder. So a personality disorder is different from a mental illness in that it's not a state or a phase. It's entrenched. It's your character. So in terms of personality disorders, a psychopath is typically somebody who lacks empathy, so they don't care about other people, even people that they're close to. So they might be married to, you know, they might be married, might have kids. They might fake being empathetic, but they don't actually really care about other people. They are really charming and manipulative, which sometimes helps with their crimes, especially for serial killers. And they're impulsive, they're aggressive, they don't care about the law, and they don't learn from their previous mistakes. So they keep doing this pattern of behavior. So that's your question. I think that psychopaths, one that I find really fascinating has to be Jimmy Savile. Okay. So he's a barn door psychopath in that he was really manipulative. He used his position of power, just like we talked about Tim Westwood, and he hid in plain sight. So by being this really weird character with his strange hair and his tracksuits and his big cigars, because he looked so bizarre, people gave him a bit of a wide berth, and they kind of thought that that's just Jimmy being Jimmy. He's just a weirdo. And the reason I think that's relevant is because I think it helped disguise his predatory behavior. So if he was like feeling up women, touching up women, they just thought, oh, he's just a sort of wacky, zany guy, I think. And also he very much manipulated his lifestyle. So he was seen as a national hero. So everyone thought of him as this philanthropist that goes around raising all this money for charity, but actually he wasn't. The charity wasn't what he was doing it for. It was to orchestrate these situations where he could be in a situation with vulnerable people like Broadmoor or like in hospitals, and then he could bounce and do it somewhere else. And he had like a lifestyle that allowed him to do that. So I think he's one of the most interesting psychopaths that I've analysed. So I did a video about him on my channel. And then Ted Bundy is... You
did that recently, actually, didn't you? Because I was going to tune into that. So yeah, you reminded me I need to watch that. So I'll do that when I go later. But you said Ted Bundy as well, yeah?
Ted Bundy, again, so he's also a psychopath in all those ways. So he's also charming and manipulative, but I think his charm was different. So he was quite a good looking, well-spoken man. And I think that helped him prey on his victims. So he'd pick these lone women and they wouldn't see him as a creep, or they wouldn't see him as somebody that's, you know, likely to sexually assault them or kill them, because he came across as very likable. Even after his arrest, he managed to, what's the word? He managed to kind of ingratiate himself with the police. So the police allowed him to do press reports, even though he should have been remanded behind bars. Some reporters actually quite liked it. Before he was found guilty during his trial, he basically got quite a lot of sympathy off these reporters. So you see this pattern of this man who is just able to charm people, to disarm people, to think that he's a decent guy. So that's typical psychopath. And to finish the question, I think that Steve Jobs might be a psychopath as well.
Okay, tell me more about that.
So from what I've read his biography, I started it. It was too wordy for me to finish. But he was I'm sure he was a nice guy in some ways, but he really pushed people to the limit that worked for him. And he was very quick to push people away or to stab people in the back if he saw it as a way to forward his product or his approach. So I can't remember the exact details, but I'm sure that during his time in Apple, he actually publicly slagged off other people that were working on different Apple projects when he was trying to release his own project. Not just like one comment, like he would on public interviews, he would down talk the other projects. So why would you do that? Why would you like shoot your own company in the foot? I think he did that because he was not just so confident in his own abilities, but he didn't care about professionally embarrassing people. And he had these really high standards, and if people didn't meet them, he would like very easily sack them. Even people that have been working for him for like years or even decades, he'd like throw them under the bus, slag them off to colleagues publicly. Like he didn't even hide this. And he would sack people by the dozens just because he wanted something done. Sometimes unrealistically, he had these deadlines. If they didn't meet them, then it's like, I don't want anything to do with you.
That's crazy. Because I always read when he was alive that he was a real autocrat, to be honest, a real kind of like, it was like running some totalitarian regime under him pretty much. So that's interesting. I'm glad you mentioned something a bit different rather than just psychopaths come in shapes and sizes, not just killers, real people who are just weird, you know, all kinds of...
And even more than that, you could argue that psychopaths are actually quite successful in the corporate world for those exact reasons. So because they have a lack of empathy and they don't mind stabbing their colleagues in the back, and because they're very clear about their demands and they don't care about whether they upset people, they actually do well in the corporate ladder. There's lots of CEOs that are psychopaths.
Well, I know we've only got 3 minutes of this one left, or 3.5 minutes left, but I wanted to just pick your brains on one last thing. So how many people do you come across that are in jail that you work with that are from gang backgrounds, gang violence and things like that?
I would say a reasonable amount of the ones that I see, maybe about 20 to 25%.
Okay, that's quite a lot.
That I know of. There's a lot of good reasons to not affiliate yourself with gangs in UK prisons. I think it's different in the States because you kind of have to click up with somebody, but in the UK, you don't want the attention, so most of them will deny it.
So what's the common theme with them? Have you ever come across psychotic behavior within them, or is that literally just an environmental thing that, you know, socioeconomic backgrounds and things like that?
I think it's far more the latter. So it's far more because they're grown up in these environments. Often, tragically, they have very little familial support and attention. Almost all of them that I've seen don't have a father figure or a stable father figure. Sometimes they grow up in environments where if they're not part of the gang, then they're a victim. And they've been bullied relentlessly, so they would rather be part of something that they see as a family. Of course, it's not family because they just get exploited, and they don't necessarily realize that until they've been to prison several times. So yeah, I think it's much more nurture than it is nature with gang members.
Okay, well, I'm actually glad you said that, because I've always been one to talk about that in my videos. I've done a lot of videos about race and a lot of videos about, say, black on black crime, for example. That whole myth, to be honest. I mean, not that it doesn't happen, but as in just the whole idea of, you know, penal. It's all a mess. And I like to put it. I like to articulate in my videos that it's very simple. You know, you've got a demographic of people who are outcast, put in decaying areas. They ain't got no money. They ain't got, crime's obviously going to go up. Probably drug use. Parents aren't going to be there. That literally breeds crime. You know what I'm saying? So that's what happens. And it really isn't rocket science. That's why I don't understand how nothing's really been done about this. But either way, oops, I've got my door slamming behind me. But since our little Zoom meetings coming to a natural conclusion, we can end there, my friend. I really appreciate you doing this video with me. I really for taking the time. Zoom, I've never done a Zoom video before, so thank you so much for taking the time to be, in your busy schedule to come, jump on my channel, and obviously myself on your channel as well. And I cannot wait, as I said to you on email, I can't wait for whenever you got time, we can actually sit down in a studio face to face and really get into some more, talk about another topic, whether it's and another Tim Westwood, you know what I'm saying? And I'm sure another person's going to come out and all that as well. But yeah, thank you so much, my friend. Appreciate it.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for asking good, interesting questions. Not all interviewers do that. And I can see that you're passionate about what we're talking about. So I appreciate you.
Of course, man. Of course. Well, thank you so much. Let me just wrap up this recording, and we'll wrap it up off the recording, and yeah, we'll go from there. So thank you so much. Your socials will be in my description below. Please hit him up, a Psych for Sore Mind. And yeah, we'll go again.
Peace, my man. All the best. Take care of yourself, my friends. Goodbye.